Right, it's official, it's happening. First up, can you hear me okay? A couple of nods from anyone? Awesome. Okay, so some of you were in the, my cat, we're in the session on Monday evening with Heidi, the Q&A that I dropped into to start with. So for those of you, we've met before, but for the rest of you, hi, I'm Kate, I'm Heidi's partner in crime for all things Unstoppable Parent and Neurocurious, the other thing we do. And I guess my job in the real world is not that this isn't real, this is totally real, but you know, the kind of, this feels kind of fun, is that I'm a psychotherapist and a clinical supervisor. I'm also autistic and ADHD, and there are still some people coming in, so I'm aware that my attention is slightly divided, but that will change. I'm also the Chief Communications Officer at an organisation called Neuroplastic, which is an American-based not-for-profit social justice, which is completely autistic-led. So those are the kind of things that I do the rest of my time. But also somebody who works a lot with Heidi, and the reason is we pair quite well because she is a person that can go out and stand in front of people, engage them, make them feel safe. She's learned all this stuff about stand law, and she's brilliant with people and quite extroverted. And I'm not. It's the reason that I work in rooms with people at one-to-one level. So I find groups of people not my natural space, and so I start off a little bit anxious and then I warm up into it. So it's a little bit anxiety provoking to be with a new bunch of people, but I figure we'll just get to know each other along the way. So I'm going to share with you our slides in a second. But I guess what I wanted to do first is just kind of set the tone, which is that I'd really love this if this was a kind of conversation and then more of a group where we could interact. I will try and keep an eye on the chat. And if anyone wants to unmic or ask a question as we go along, that's okay too, or to ask me to reword or explain differently, or slow down, or just if you have any access needs, just holler if you can. Okay, some more people come in. I will share my screen. Have to check something. Here we go. Now, can you see that? The person that I can see is Ruth. Ruth, can you be my chief of nodding? So if I need to ask a yes or no question, you can do that for me. Brilliant. So I take it from this that you can all see that. So first up, really, I just wanted to check in with people. I don't know if you've ever seen this kind of thing, but this is Blob Tree, because the question, how are you, can be quite a tricky one to answer sometimes, because what does it even mean? Does it mean how I am like in life generally? Does it mean how I am right now? Gosh, that's a lot of information and a complicated thing to answer. My interoception's a bit wobbly. I don't even know how my body is in this inside. How can you even feel on the inside? And if people are alexithymic, which means they find it hard to identify feelings and name them, that's a tricky question. So my question for you is, if you were a blob on this tree, what number would you be? Where are we at right now? I think I'm probably about 10. Amanda, 7. Oh, okay, clinging on a bit. Amber, Leo, 4. Oh no. Okay. Jerry, 2. Michelle, 10. Yeah, 8, 3, 7, 7, 8, and 7. Okay. And then 11. Oh, you've got a buddy. Maybe we're the buddy. Number 7. Yeah, so there's a few people that are kind of 7 and 14 and feeling like we're really hanging on a bit. So that's super relatable. And a 6. 6, okay, climbing up. Yeah, so part of what we're hoping for with the um, Unstoppable Parents cohort is always to create a sense of community, because as much as I'm a therapist and as much as I believe in therapy as a really healing process, I think that the only other thing that I got as much healing from was community. And I didn't find community really until a lot later in my journey, like relatively recently, and maybe in the last 7 or 8 years. And it made a huge, huge difference. So, yeah, I really hope that you can find some of that here with us. Now, on the agenda for tonight is what Heidi calls monkey mind. And I kind of think slightly differently about and call the kind of inner critic. So oh, and this is just a little reminder that the whole kind of scope of Unstoppable Parents is to be able to support you to put your own oxygen mask on first before attending to other people. Because generally, parents in the kind of positions that you're in, which means that you're here in this group, are quite often in a bit of a battle, have been in a battle for some time, looking for answers, trying to make sense of what it means to be neurodivergent, either for children or for yourself, both. I feel like there's a big old trajectory of people, and I was included in this, that kind of go, oh, my kid's are neurodivergent, my partner's neurodivergent. God, well, my friends are neurodivergent. Everyone I like best. I'm not, though, am I? Hang on a minute. Maybe I am. Gosh, I don't want to take up space that's not meant for me. Maybe I'm not. But I've got some sensory needs. Gosh, there's social stuff that's tricky. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of in the deep end of trying to make sense of your own experiences if you don't already know. So this drawing was illustrated by Theo, Heidi's son, who has a very literal mind. And we were told, the brief was, can you draw something that's about putting your own mask on first? And yeah, he drew somebody whose face had gone blue because they had not put their own mask on. So, thank you, Theo. Right, so Monkey Mind 101. What I was going to do this evening was talk to this concept of monkey mind, but teach you a bit of transactional analysis, which is the model of therapy. Oh gosh, that changes quickly. Spoiler. Model of psychotherapy I'm trained in. So, how many of you can identify with the notion of having an inner critic? Let me see in the chat. Yeah, our chat's gone missing already. Yeah. Seems like that's a fairly common experience. And when you think about that internal critical voice, what kind of things might it say? What's the tone of it or the feeling that you get when you think about it? Negative. Okay, so not sure if you do have one internally, but maybe your critics are external. Oh, yeah, it's critical. Guilt, aggressive, feeling like a failure, so it's quite judgmental, put you in your place, like, who do you think you are, kind of thing. No patience, no compassion. Yeah. So what we know from this is there's a lot of common humanity in this as a concept, that most of us are carrying or have carried an inner critic that tries to keep us in our place. Now, in TA, we have this notion of ego states. And this is a metaphor. So my invitation to you is to engage with it to whatever extent it's useful. And if it just doesn't feel right or doesn't feel like the theory that makes sense to you, you can just let it go. But this idea of an ego state is that there are, at a basic level, three parts to the self. You're inner parent, you're an adult, you're inner child. So when you're kind of thinking, behaving, experiencing the world as your parents did, or caregivers, earliest caregivers or authority figures, like the closest to you. Not every authority figure, but the ones that were closest and most influential in your early life. When you're thinking, feeling, behaving in the world as they were, that's your parent ego state. And when you're behaving and thinking and feeling very much like somatic and feelings as you did when you were a kid, that's your child ego state. And when you're just in the here and now, present and able to be present and grounded, that's our adult ego state. Oh, there's some people in the waiting room. I will let them in. Watch me not multitask. Participant, admit. I'm going to change the real estate on my screen around so I can see all the things. Hello, people, come on in. So the important thing to know about this is there's no hierarchy here. The reason it's in this order is because it's like you're seeing in front of you, is because it's arranged developmentally. Starts with the child, then the adult, and the parent. But we need all of those ego states. They're all important, which we'll get onto a bit later. But the child part is split into three sections. So the free child is like you at your most like organic state as you were born, like the core of who you are, the soul of you, the who you'd be if you never had to change who you are or dampen your little fire for anyone else. Your most natural state. The adapted child is the child version of us that we become in response to our environment, in response to the people around us, like the child that we become in order to keep the love and approval of those around us. Because we don't have the love and approval of those around us as really little people, it's a real existential threat. We can't, as children, survive without adults who care for us enough. And the rebel is part of that adapted child. Now, the rebel is really important, I think, because some people can confuse it for a free child, the rebellious child, because it looks kind of like, I don't care, I'll do what I want. The thing about the rebel is if there was no boundary there, if there was nothing telling you that you had to be any different, that you'd have nothing to rebel against. It's not free. It's kind of autonomy seeking maybe, but it hasn't got autonomy. And then we whiz up to the parent, and that goes into two parts, right? We have like an inner critical parent and an inner nurturing parent. And how much or to what extent we kind of have energy in any of these states often depends on our life experiences. If you have a really loud critical parent, then what I would expect is that you'll spend a lot of time when you're feeling really emotional in that adapted child state, because you've had to adapt a lot in response to criticism in your life, in response to negativity and conditions placed on your worth. So the critical voice in our head quite often stems from critical voices early in our life, and we take them on and we kind of create an inner critic because it helps us stay in line with the rules that would have existed as we were kids, and it keeps us safe, because if we don't step outside them, then we can maybe be safe. Now that's a plan and a script created by a very small version of ourselves, but it's the smartest thing we can possibly do in life early on, is we kind of take on board a set of rules that if we keep to them, we will survive the environment that we're in, because our nervous system and our brain at, at fundamentally has unconditional love for us and it wants us to survive. How is this sitting with people? The inner critic as a kind of internalized versions of the voices around us when we were growing up, and maybe even now. Does that make sense? Yeah, Zoe says true. So that voice is to try and stop us stepping out of line. Often, like stop us from breaking rules that existed when we were little. Sometimes the rules that we're afraid of breaking actually could be broken in the here and now. But it feels like existentially terrifying to step outside of them because of the consequences that would have existed when we were little. So we're afraid, and we can't quite say why we're afraid, but we might feel it in our whole body because there's an old part of us that is like, no, I really believe that if I do something different here, I'll be in trouble. And the reason I'm bringing this to you is because in advocating for your kids, you're probably breaking a lot of the rules that might have existed for you as a young person. You're having to speak out, you're challenging authority, you're perhaps facing criticism, you're maybe having to do something vulnerable and new. You're maybe feeling vulnerable because you're discovering parts of yourself. And that can feel really destabilizing. It can make us sometimes very anxious and panicky. And this is why, through the TA lens, through a transactional analysis lens, this is our explanation for it. It's because you're breaking old rules that were made to keep you safe, but now no longer are necessary for you. Like a lot of the time when people turn up in therapy with me, what's happening is that they have this set of rules that they're living by that have kept them safe for a good number of years, but now they're not working for them anymore. It's like coping strategies that they've outgrown. They haven't got that language for it, it's not conscious. And what we end up is doing is kind of exploring what their script is, what they believe about themselves in the world, whether that's now true for them and whether something needs to change, and changing that together in like a belief or a way of being in the world. So I guess I'm wondering, yeah, like not all of you will be battling a system for your kids, but I imagine that many of you are. Is that true? Like, where actually, it'd be really good to kind of get a sense of what's brought you here. Is it for yourself, which I would love? Is it because something's going on with kids? Yeah, Ruin says yes. Kids fighting for your daughter, battling ally terrifies me. Zoe, that feeling wanting to run away and hide. Yes. Need to build confidence to fight the LA. Struggle to cope with parenting, mix of both, battling for a child. 2 neurodivergent children unable to attend school. We're being told by the authorities that has to happen. There will be consequences, and I bet there would have been consequences for us if we didn't attend school, because we were told that there was one way of going through the education system, and that was it. For yourself, so you can be fighting for your child. LA, understanding, feeling alone. Yeah. Okay, so in Ireland, school attendance is a measure of success, and over it, pushing uphill. Yeah. So there's a lot of isolation, exhaustion, feeling alone. Yeah, it's hard when you're in a relationship and not both on this, or even if it's a relationship that you're not only in, you're co-parenting. when you're on different pages, that's really rough. Yeah, and quite doesn't understand or believe in ASD. Yeah, so there's some kind of internal script there for him about what's real and what it would mean if autism was a thing. Like what would he believe about his child if they really were autistic? So you guys have all got a lot in common. You found your people. So you're battling with your ex for support or your young person. Struggling to know what's best to do. Okay. So, okay, lots of battlings with exes, which can really be tough on the nervous system as well. So one of the things that can happen when we become aware that we have like an inner critic is that we can start to try and get critical about a critic, like try and shout it down. Um, and that doesn't work because you just end up with more criticism, more anger, and more denial of yourself. And it doesn't work because that critic is actually really fighting for you. That inner critic is trying to help you survive. And if there are no bad parts of us, the critic has a function. It's not that critical parent is bad and nurturing parent is good. Let me show you. Can I show you? Got a lot of things on my screen that are moving around. So the critical parent, the positives of it is it sets safe boundaries. Yeah, it says, I want you home by 10 o'clock because I love you, and that would be a safe thing for you. But it can be punitive and abusive, it can overstep it. That's a function of the same part. The nurturing parent is the voice of compassion. So if you come home after 10 o'clock and you've been drinking a lot and you get up in the morning, you feel awful, the nurturing parent's like, okay, well, you've got your first hangover and you're going to need some water and might look after you. Whereas it can be smothering and disempowering and not help to stretch somebody and help them grow. The adult ego state, I always think of this as, like, when I was taught about this, I was taught about it as though the adult ego state was like Spock. I don't think it's quite like that, but it's very grounded in the here and now, and it's our best problem solving. But we can be, if we were just in the adult ego state all the time, we'd be like very grounded, not particularly emotional, because the emotions live in the child, and we'd be making decisions about things that were just very rational. So we might be a bit captains. Oh, I don't know why this is happening, folks. I'm giving you a whole heap of spoilers for reasons I don't understand. There we go. Yeah, Captain Sensible. The adapted child adheres to rules, but you can lose your sensible, authentic self if you are constantly moving and changing yourself in order to fit the mold for others. The rebel child is a great self-advocate, but it can be lonely because it can push away. I always think about our PDAs as quite powerful rebels and advocates. I don't know whether that rings true for you, if any of you have a parenting a PDA or are a PDA. But I think our PDA is quite often the system disruptors, and will shine a light on the things that aren't working because they cannot lose autonomy, so they'll show us. And the free child is playful and creative, but quite often impulsive, so we might need to rein that in. So you see, there's no entirely good or entirely bad. Kind of in TA terms, a healthy mind is one where we've got energy in all of these states and we can have a balance of boundaries and kindness. So if we try to get rid of that critical voice, the critical parent, the inner critic that lives up there, then we miss out on the safe boundaries. So what we need is to add nurturing parent rather than to shout down a critic. We need to add compassion to ourselves. So noticing, God, I can hear a really critical voice. There might be some part of me that's scared that I'm getting this wrong. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to like do some reality checking and some grounding, because that's the voice of the critic. And maybe there's good information there, but it doesn't mean I should like be seen and not heard. It doesn't mean that I'm doing something wrong. It just means if I had advocated like this, or I had rested like this when I was a kid, then it wouldn't have been okay. How's this sounding? Because critics can, it's not just like if we speak up and advocate for ourselves, sometimes it's about taking rest. We can have all sorts of feelings about what it means to go to bed and have a nap, or like to put work down for a minute and do something that's caring for the self. So I'm interested in when it shows up for you, that critical voice. So there are particular times when it's loud. Links a lot to polyvagal theory. Has anyone heard about it? Oh, talking to professionals. That makes a lot of sense because they tend to come at you from the parenting part of them, like finger waggy, punitive parenting, and then you're primed to feel like the child, like, and go back to how you would have felt when you were a kid and you were talking to a teacher. So if that was difficult for you as a kid, then that's the dynamic you get invited back into, and then you can feel like you have to be compliant. And of course, that's the very reason that this system is broken, because it's compliance based. Okay, email lands from the LA. Never, yeah, that's a common one. And don't emails always land from the LA at 10 to 5 on a Friday? It's like a thing they do. Yeah, so if I'm not being good, then I'm unsafe. Yeah, we're gonna dip into polyvagal, and I think that might make sense of that bit. Do you know my top tip for emails from anyone really who have that effect on your nervous system is that if you know the addresses that they're going to come from, you put a filter on them and you create a folder, and you filter them so they go to the folders initially, not your inbox, because then you can choose in your own time and have some autonomy over when you read them. Like, no, screw you. You're not going to get to jump into my inbox and hijack my nervous system. You can send your emails at 10 to 5 on a Friday, but I'm not going to read them until 11 o'clock on a Monday morning. I'm going to have my weekend, and you can't take that from me. So from anyone, not just the LA, but if you have a family member who can do that to your nervous system, you can make your heart rate speed up, and that kind of voice come back and make you feel like you're not good enough, or who the hell are you to be doing what you're doing, and that you're parenting wrong, or you're just not being punitive enough. Because people do assume that, don't they? Like, you must do things the kind of conventional way, as if most of us didn't start off doing things the conventional way and decide that they didn't work. Like, it never occurred to us to do things how they were done with us. Yeah, panic of punishment. And sometimes that's real. Sometimes it's not going to happen, and sometimes it is. Because the way our brain works is that our amygdala, here's the hand of the brain model. Some of you might have seen this, but you have your brainstem here, spine here, brainstem here, and your amygdala, which is like the brain's fire alarm right in the middle. And it's like a sort of dodgy fire alarm, because it doesn't know if the toast is burning or if the house is on fire. Its only job is to just go off if there's smoke. And you have your frontal cortex over the top, and that's your like hard maths kind of highest clever thinking up here. Now, when the brain picks up some kind of threat, the neuroception picks up any kind of threat, the amygdala sounds the alarm, and the frontal cortex goes offline. And that's because all of the energy, all of the blood flow, all of everything needs to go on to keeping yourself safe, which is polyvagal theory, right? So now all you need to do is save your own life. It doesn't know if the toast is burning or the house is on fire, it's just smelt smoke. And so sometimes we can act as though the house is on fire because we can't quite check in that moment. So we haven't exercised our ability to take a moment and just see if the house is on fire, because everything feels like it's on fire and like we have to act now. Very few things are an absolute emergency that need us to act right now, but trauma and anxiety will make us feel like everything is life or death in this moment, because that's what panic's for. The function of panic is to help you save your life. The function of anxiety is to help you make a plan for something difficult in the future. So if we're panicking, it's because you think your life is in danger. So if you're with someone who's panicking, one of the things you can do is gently, like, you're safe right now. I know you don't feel it, you're safe right now, and wait. Because eventually that frontal cortex comes back online and we're capable of doing thinking. But if somebody's in that stage, like meltdown, the thing to do is reduce demands, reduce noxious sensory, like maybe lights or sound, and increase the sensory that's more comforting, which might be something soft. It might be some pressure. But we don't do touch unless we know or have had kind of consent for that beforehand, that we know it's going to be okay. Okay, chat, let's have a look. Check time. Amazing GP says I need to work on vagal toning to help with my ADHD and physical inflammatory issues. He's really busy, so couldn't teach me, but I want to learn how to do it. We could finish up with a little vagal exercise at the end of this that I really love. Let's do that. Around in-laws that don't stop my children, critical of our parenting. Different ringtone for school, and have a good relationship with them, but it means I don't panic every time my phone rings. That's cool. Sent some sarcastic emails in my rebel state, but that was probably last time in LA. Good idea. So that's a good idea. Okay, so I'll leave it. I'm presenting from a Google document, which I've never done before, but that's where Heidi works from, so that's my defense. Right, this is polyvagal theory. Let me get some stuff up. Polyvagal. So the autonomic nervous system controls our vital body functions, but it's also at the heart of our daily experiences. So it influences how we live, love, work, and the way we move through the world. With the development of this theory, it kind of reconceptualized what we understood about our vagus nerve. So most people have heard of fight, flight responses. That's familiar. Maybe the less ironically, safe and social is probably one of the lesser known bits of the vagal system. That's the bit when we're just all right. But fight, flight, please and appease, that sometimes gets called fawn. And when I first drew this, I wrote fawn there, and I've changed it. Because I feel like when we say fawn, people feel like that's a manipulation. It's a strategy, but it's completely unconscious. Please and appease is kind of where masking sits, I think. It's what we do to try and make situations less dangerous. So when you feel somebody in the room is angry and you try to de-escalate it because you know that if they were to get more angry, somebody might get hurt, that's pleasing and appeasing sometimes. So the thing to know about the polyvagal theory and the autonomic nervous system is that there's a definite hierarchy. It ladders down. So when we're in our safe and social state, the question, this is completely unconscious, and it happens in fractions of seconds. So we're in that state and our neuroception picks up some kind of threat. And it's important to say here that it perceives threat. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is a threat, or that it's the threat that you would perceive. Because if you have a different sensory profile to me, and I perceive a threat because I have neurological pain because there's a noise, a sound that's hurting me, or there's a seam in my socks, you're not going to perceive it in the same way, and it won't be a threat to you, and it won't trigger your nervous system, but it is for me. So if that threat is perceived, then the first thing our brain does is like, can I protect myself with connection and just talking to somebody? And if we can, we do. Brilliant, sorted. Back online. Next is, can I protect myself by being assertive and addressing the threat head on? So that's our kind of bitey response. I don't know if anyone else can kind of maybe identify what fight looks like on them. It might be a bit snappy, it might be combative, or kids. The next is, okay, so fighting either wasn't possible or I couldn't do it, or the power differential just meant it wasn't possible. So the next thing is, can I just run from this? And this is so primal because, back in the days when we had to keep ourselves safe from dinosaurs, that's historically correct, I think. What we needed to do was fight the dinosaur, run away from the dinosaur, or like offer the dinosaur some other meat. Like that age-old bit of our brain, it's the oldest bit of our brain, that kind of reptilian brain. So if you can run, so elopement, lots of kids will run from school, be runners. If not, then please and appease. And then if that doesn't work, then all that's left is just to freeze and shut down. Now, I know that it ladders down, but sometimes if we have a repeated experience of there being no option to fight because we just don't have that amount of power, and there's nowhere to run, and pleasing and appeasing just isn't a skill that we have, or people are immune to our charms, then we can learn over time just go straight to freeze, and we can miss things out. So we do ladder down, but over time we can miss things, which means that if you have a kid, or you yourself, and you are so used to just seeing their freeze and shut down and disappearing, and then as they spend time away from school and they start to regulate and rest and feel safer, they start to be a bit bitey or a bit more running away, a bit more of a bugger. That's kind of a good thing because they've now got capacity for some of those earlier points in their polyvagal system. So it might not be convenient, but it's sometimes a good sign, because to fight, you've got to feel like maybe you'd have some power. And to flight, you're like, I'm now using the adrenaline and the cortisol running through my body when I feel threatened, which we should. So in the animal world, animals shake when they experience trauma or threat or distress. They shake, and they shake out all the stress hormones that flood the system, adrenaline and cortisol, and those are fast-acting hormones. And they shake it out, and they move on. And I'm going to quote this slightly wrongly, but I want you to take the gist of it. Is that I was in some training once where they said in the animal kingdom, something like, it was 6 or 9, but I'm dyscalculating, so that's the same number in my head. 6 or 9% of the frontal cortex of animals is designed to is used for recovering from something traumatic. But in humans, it's like 26 or 29. It's like we've kind of done ourselves out of our physical responses. We've taught ourselves that that's not okay, and that we'd be doing something weird and wrong, and that we have to just suck it up. And that meant we're using a lot of our cognitive power to try and get over trauma, rather than allowing our body to support us through something stressful. So when you can feel that your heart rate is rising and you are stressed out, and I don't know if anyone knows that feeling of like an adrenaline burst. Like, can anyone identify that feeling of like when you know that you've just had a big adrenaline dump in your system? If you can move your body then, If you can literally do what Taylor Swift said, shake it out, that's really good for you. And encourage your kids to do. Like, that was scary, wasn't it? It's okay to stand up, shake your legs. You're okay, but you've got stuff running through your body now. That's meant to save your life, but you don't need it because you're safe now. Come on, let's shake that out. That's a helpful thing. Sitting down and staying still when we've got all of the adrenaline and cortisol in our body, it's not very good for us. Very good for us at all. So feet on the floor. If you're in a meeting and you can't just get up and shake it out, or you can call for a toilet break, bathroom break, or you can do a thing where you like tense your muscles, hold it, let them go, tense your muscles, hold it and let it go. You're literally spending energy. Making sense to people. Let me have a look at the chat. Describes your child. This list is exactly what happened in order during a traumatic childbirth for me. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a very human thing. And your brain does all this because it unconditionally loves you and wants you to survive. In the moments when it's happening, it can feel like you're being really let down by your body. And it's the complete opposite. Your body will shut you down if it is not safe for you to carry on. And your body will help you run if it's not safe for you to stay where you are. React like this to your son's meltdowns. Helpful. Well, very human though. So something about your son's meltdowns really triggers your threat response. So in that case, if he can be made safe, like if he is somewhere where he isn't a danger to himself, then it is okay for you to leave and regulate yourself first. When I say regulate, I wonder if everyone has the same understanding? Who thinks regulation means, that's a trap of a question. Regulation is often thought to mean calm. That's not what it is. Regulation is the right energy for the task in front of you. So sometimes that's calm, like if you're going to sleep, that regulated is calm. But if you're on a roller coaster, regulated, if you were calm, that would be a bit dissociated maybe. And that's not the right energy for when you're whizzing through the air, like upside down. So if you're calm in very, very heightened situations, that might be a clue that you're heading towards the shutdown. My daughter regularly uses movement, spinning, dancing to calm herself. She does this without realizing she's excited, angry, anxious. It's how she gets rid of her energy. Yes. Yeah. And so that means there's like maybe a lot of adrenaline that needs spending. And that's spinning is like a vestibular sensory stimulation, and vestibular sensory input can be a heightener energetically, bring your energy upwards. So if you need to make your energy higher to do something, vestibular input can help. And proprioception, which is the force on your joints and your body, OTs call it heavy work, is a dampener. That's why we tense our jaws when we're anxious or our shoulders come up. We're looking for pressure on our body to dampen the impact of the high energy and the anxiety. So the spinning, yes, it's given her vestibular, but also this, if she's dancing, there's pressure on her joints too. So she's doing literally a really clever dance of spinning, of managing the ups and the downs. Pacer. Oh, I like a good pace. Oh, if she's excited watching a TV program, so really feels what's going on in the TV program, so then like really stims to kind of manage the anxiety of it. Makes sense? Oh, you shout and feel guilty and then afterwards and cry. Well, sometimes we need to shout. That's getting rid of the energy of what's happening. So sometimes what we shout in a meltdown is really hard, because we can shout things that hurt the feelings of others, and then sometimes that's an invitation into a bit of shame. Because the thing about shame, the function of it, is to tell us when we're out of line with our values. Everyone, apart from maybe sociopaths, have capacity for shame. Toxic shame is when it's not, it's like we have no way of soothing ourselves. But shame itself just pops up as a feeling to tell you you did something that was out of alignment with how you feel. So when you're shouting, I would say that that's like your fight. Your fight turns up. And anger is often the bodyguard for sadness. So it doesn't make sense to me that then you're crying, because you've got rid of all that energy of the anger, of the dysregulation of the fight, and now you're just sad and hurt because of all the things that led up to that meltdown. Because meltdowns are very rarely about the thing that happens just before them. They're about all the things that happened before that, and you're just done. And there's relationships to repair afterwards. Sounds like you need a lot of compassion for yourself. Things to regulate your fetish. Yeah, well, that's the resonance in the chest, isn't it? That can be a really powerful thing. So is polyvagal kind of making sense to people? It's neuroception is the name in the sense that perceive danger. So some people, because we have, because neurodivergent people have sensory profiles that are kind of, we tend to be hypo or hypersensitive across our senses. And that means that our neuroception can be hyposensitive or hypersensitive. So we can have like 0 sense of danger, like my youngest kid, or a very sensitive sense of danger, like my eldest. So sometimes that can mean the fire alarm goes off when there's just a hint of smoke, or you can have a kid that just walks straight out into the sea, just pulling an example out from nowhere. Yeah, okay. Just checking that I'm not missing anyone and I'm waiting. Is there a good way of explaining this to our kids to help them better understand themselves? Well, I use the hand as a brain thing a lot. And you can draw a picture of a ladder and put those polyvagal responses on them. I think what's important is to really normalize that as that's what a brain does, that's what it's supposed to do. That's not a moral failing that you shouted or screamed or that you ran. That's what happens to a brain when our capacity to cope or our resources for coping are overwhelmed by the situation we're in. It's very human. If that the hand as a brain thing is it's a theory that, not a theory, like a thing that a guy called Dan Siegel came up with. If you put that into, I'm going to put this in the chat. Hand as a brain, Dan Siegel. I think that's how you spell it. I bet you'd get some videos and you could have a look through those to see if any are sort of child friendly. Oh, it's coming up as Heidi. She's not here. I'm logged in as there. It's not. Yeah. Oh, this is really irritating. Okay, so polyvagal theory, what do our autonomic nervous system responses look like? Because in different situations, they can look different. So for example, our flight response when we're online on social media, it can be like, I need to leave this group, I don't belong here, everyone hates me, and leaving groups a lot. It could, a fight online might look like someone who's a keyboard warrior, who's like really, really angry, really escalated about things. Please and appease, people who are compulsively helpful, people pleasing, anxious, fearful. Taking responsibility for other people's feelings can be a big one if you're a people pleaser. Like the idea of other people having feelings and not being okay would really maybe be quite triggering, especially if as a kid you had parents who were quite explosive or who weren't able to regulate well. That would have been really scary for you as a child. So in adulthood, people having big feelings is a thing that might make you kind of go, I have to make this okay for them. Often at like the expense of your stress levels or spoons. I'm wondering if anyone else can see any of their fight, flight, pleasing and appeasing behaviors here, or have any others that they can think of. Yeah, having to be the parent as a child. That's the term. Parentified child is the term for that. So you spend a lot of time in freeze. So shaking things, like moving your body, even if it's just wiggling your fingers and your toes. Does that mean that you feel like an inertia? So I'm not sure if you're talking about like a cognitive freeze or like I'm sat on the sofa and I can't move. If it's I'm sat down and I can't move and I feel stuck, what you need to be able to move is for your motor cortex to come online. The way to get it back online is to imagine moving. The first step isn't moving, it's to imagine moving. That'll wake it up. And then wiggle your toes, move your eyeballs, and sometimes a 1, 2, 3 and up. Like brains love a countdown for some reason. Maybe it's the dopamine at the end of it, who knows. But the first move is like to coach the motor of the body. It's like, okay, I'm going to move my arm. I'm going to imagine moving my foot. Now I'm going to move my foot. That can help us get unstuck. How do you help a people pleaser? Wow, that's hard, isn't it? Because that's helping a person that needs to help. So increasing their sense of so sometimes a people pleaser can only feel okay if someone else is okay, and it can make it really hard to express need. And it's really hard to express need if you don't even know what your needs are or your wants are, because you've tuned them out for other people to take priority. So we can change that, but we need to do it in like low stakes environments, like helping someone to express a preference over pizza topping. So it's not like I don't mind. It's like I know you don't mind, but like, what would you like? What do you want? Like I know you don't mind, but it's your turn. Everyone will be okay with whatever you choose. So low stake stuff, tiny moments of making a preference important, and the world not ending. I'm sensitive to others' moods because of childhood and now an indie household and trying to regulate everyone else. Yeah, so if other people, we can only regulate what we've been taught to regulate. So if people weren't really good with their anger or they're upset, you know, if it was made scary as a kid, then we're not going to be at ease with it unless we do a little bit of work. So, Jan, this makes a lot more sense now. I've seen the variety of responses for each bit of the ladder. I don't think of myself as physically freezing, but I can definitely avoid or experience decision paralysis. Yeah, that's the type of freeze, for sure. And decisions, like when we're in burnout, decisions can get hard too. I'm really aware of the time, so I'm just gonna have a look at the last slide. We're back into Heidi slides. So, questions? Does anyone have any questions? And then what we'll do is we'll do a little vagal toning exercise, a bit of a reset. I'm gonna stop this. Oh, am I gonna stop this? Yes. I can see your face. Anyone got any questions? If I can't answer them, I will go away and research and come back to you.
I've got a question about masking. And so my daughter, she's very much in feeling stuck and just freezes and shuts down. And as soon as she tries to take herself out of that to try and step out in the world a little bit, then she just straight away goes back to masking, the people pleasing, and then burns out again. And it's like, I just don't know what the answer is to
So
make
just,
her even realise that she's doing it.
yeah, she can't see the masking.
She doesn't know. She doesn't really know any different. All she knows is she can't keep it up now.
Yeah. So some part of that is really exhausting.
Mm.
Yeah. So part of it is kind of noticing what is exhausting, what is hard, what can't you do, and sometimes we don't know it in the moment, but the clue is what can't you do once you're burnt out, like what is too much to carry on doing, and there's potentially your answer.
She
Okay,
literally shuts down to doing nothing, and then
yeah.
she what she can't do is even be around people. So it's
Okay,
a
so,
little bit all or nothing, very much. And what she wants is to be able to be around people, and she just doesn't manage it.
okay, so we know that it's people. And is
Yeah,
it every person? Like sort of picking into it, it's like, is it every person or is it some people? And if it's some people, is it those same people all the time, or are there environments that you can do it in? So, for example, if I was to go out and do a social thing that was a bit chit chatty, I couldn't do that for more than an hour. But if I was doing some, like, had a specific activity to do with someone, like that would scaffold it, I could do that for much longer. So it's really getting curious about, have there been social things that you've loved? And have there been things that are much harder? And what did they have in common? Does that make sense? And if there are
does. I
people,
think yeah, she's just sort of taken herself out. She's a PDA, but she's just taken herself right away, so she doesn't even remember the experiences where she did. I think she had a whole year of not even leaving the house, and then she wanted to try to. She didn't manage secondary school, so she hasn't had the school experience. And then she wanted to go to college, can't manage to be around the people, but she hasn't had the 5 years of
practice,
practicing. Yeah,
yeah. Um, so I guess running experiments, like permission to run experiments, and for it to be about not a failing on her part, and maybe exposure to other neurodivergent people who have that thing in common, because it's really hard to not feel like some kind of weird alien if you're the only one in the world that you know of that experiences it like you. Um, so is there a way to connect to, or it might even be that feels too much for her at the moment, but it, like, reading lived experiences of other PDAs, or like, so
yeah,
feeling like there is community, even if you're not ready to engage with it in person or talk to it, just know about it, because
yeah. I do think that is the next. That is the next step. But I think I just have to wait for her to be ready to.
yeah,
It's funny, she has to be ready to find it on her own, rather than
yeah,
if I suggest it, it would be a no. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Got to wait till the spirit moves her. That's the way with
yeah,
PDA.
yeah. Thank
And it just
you.
will, but it's excruciating sometimes to be in that waiting place. Someone's just apologised for coming in at the end. It doesn't matter. You're welcome here anytime. Yeah, building in more recovery time, more transition time for things. I didn't really learn that until my 30s, that I needed a lot of recovery time. I just thought I was in a bad mood all the time. Turns out, no. How, as a parent, do you stop freeze for us as a parent to help our kids? So stop your own freeze. Okay. Well, I guess the first bit is knowing that you are in freeze and having a lot of compassion for yourself. I'm in freeze. What is it that's unsafe? Can I make my environment more safe? Can I push away, make some space to bring the threat level down? So that might, I don't know about the specific situation that you're in, but sometimes it means pulling in more support for yourself if it's possible. So, like, can you have a buddy that's going to be around while you make a phone call for a bit of co-regulation? It's okay to need co-regulation as an adult. I'm just going to put that out there. It's all right to need other people with you to regulate. That is not moral failing. So can you have a friend that you're going to message in a particular situation, or that can go and sit in a meeting with you, or it's hard when I don't know what the freeze is, but we'll keep this going in the group discussion as well. Daughter resists a diagnosis or refuses to be part of peer groups or accept adjustments. She wants to be the same as everyone else, but masks and then burns out. That's the previous question. She's all or nothing. Yeah, it's hard when kind of there's maybe a level of like internalized ableism because of what the world has maybe made her believe that she has to be or how she has to be. It's kind of unsafe as a kid not to be just like your peers. Peers can be brutal. And horrible to watch somebody have to be on their own journey of learning before they're ready to be like, I can't do this anymore. But I guess keeping that route open, saying like, you are different, but many people are different. This might seem controversial. I don't know if there's such a thing as a neurotypical brain. I don't think everyone's autistic. I don't think everyone's ADHD. But I think there are an infinite number of ways to be human. And that this neuronormative standards that we apply to everything screws with more people than it helps. And so that thing of like, we are all differently wired, and some of us are wired in a way that this environment or that environment will be completely intolerable. And society is putting more and more pressure on us, which means that the neurodivergent people are kind of like the canaries in the coal mine. Your inability to get through this without burning out is because of the environment that you're in and the pressure that is being put on you and the lack of flexibility that's offered. That is not a mark of failing. That's a mark of an environment that's toxic. I've got loads of plants on my windowsill. If that one there just wilted, I wouldn't think it was a shit plant. I would say that's not the right place for that plant, and I would move it or give it some more water or something more like, because that would be on me. It's my plant. I'm responsible for it. I will just do something different. Soapbox. When you develop close friendships, yeah, I'm yet to find one person for which the word right now just suits. Yeah. Let's keep this conversation going in the group, but I want to do, before I go, let's do, if you would like to, we can do a little bagel reset. And it might not work for you the first time, but if you want to, I would encourage you to have another go, like when you're not here and you're on your own, and just see how it works. So the first thing to do is to have a look over your right shoulder and notice how much movement you've got in your, like how much range you've got in, how far you can look back. And then same over the other shoulder and notice whether that's kind of better or worse. You might have one that's easier than the other. Also, if you've got any kind of pain or disability that means that you can't do that, you're your own boss, don't do it. But the next thing is what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of keep your head facing forward, but only move your eyes in the direction that I'm going to tell you to. So you face forward and then gradually pick a side, left or right. Gradually move your eyes in that direction with your head forward. Not so that it's really uncomfortable, but just to like the point where it's kind of comfy and as far as you can go without feeling like it's strained, and then hold it. Slow your breathing. What you might notice is an urge to yawn or a cough, maybe even a little bit. It's okay if you don't. Then bring your eyes slowly back to the middle. And again, with your head just facing the front, take your eyes the other way and do the same thing. Slowly to the other side. Hold it there. Breath right into your diaphragm. Let it out as far as you can go. You might notice a little yawn That's what I want for you. I want a little yawn for you. No pressure. Practice it outside of this if you don't get it. And hold it. There's no too long an amount for you to hold your gaze over to the right or left. And then when you're done, just bring your eyes back to the center. When you've done that, I want you to go and look over your shoulders again like you did before. Over there. Slowly. Over there. Did anyone notice more range of movement? Yeah. Okay. No for sure, but a good few yeses. Okay. Anyone get any kind of yawn or little different, any kind of difference in breathing as they did that? Oh no, but my legs started jiggling. That is it's like a trauma release thing. It's like you're doing, remember we talked about the shaking to move you out of a stress response? That's good. You win. No yawn, but a bit more relaxed. Little yawn, lots of yawning. Okay, that is you flipping back into your parasympathetic nervous system, out of your sympathetic nervous system. There we go. Back into your yeah, parasympathetic. Hurt your eyes. Okay, don't go that far. If it's hurting your eyes, you're pushing them just too far. It doesn't have to strain. So you can practice it lying down and just support your head when you're lying down, like cradle it with your hands like your little baby. And before bed, it might help you relax into sleep. But yeah, you should get a little bit more movement in your shoulders as well. If we don't yawn, is it still worth doing? Yeah, it feels nice. If it feels nice, yes. And it might be that if you practice it, you're more able to relax into it. It might feel a bit forced now. And if you are at all demand avoidant, this was going to be a no-go for you anyway. So in your time, if you choose to do it, see if it means still yawning. See how it feels. So that's a little vagal toning, like vagal reset. Yes, so your sympathetic nervous system is your fight, flight, fawn, and your parasympathetic is kind of rest and restore when you're in a kind of a good place. It's your shutdown when you're not in a good place, but when you're in a kind of regulated place, your parasympathetic is just rest and restore, and it can get you back into your safe and social, which is good. And if you spent a lifetime in fight or flight, staying in safe and social can be a thing that's tricky. So we need to practice it like a few seconds at a time. So that practice of looking for glimmers, like it doesn't mean something that was wonderful in a day. It can just mean a moment where, I don't know, light shines through the trees and you go, oh, that's pretty. Just notice it. You can see some yawning going on. Just noticing little micro moments of, oh, it's nice. It's extending your ability to stay in safe and social. And if it's with your kids, like sometimes it can feel like if you name something, it disappears, like or it's like it'll be resisted. But it's saying that you enjoyed something. So like if you say to the kid, oh, that was nice, wasn't it? But no, it's all right. It almost feels like throwing it out there to get a shot down. If you can say, I really enjoyed that. I can't argue with that. You did. It's your brain. You liked it. So making it safe to enjoy something just by modeling it, it can help capacity and social. Right then, run over slightly. I hope that's all right. But I feel like with a yawning bunch of people, that might be a good place to leave it. We will carry this on in the group if you want to talk more about it. Let me just check up what's going on week 2 for you. Oh, brain train and I can speak. Brain train, and this is not a raft building workshop, so it's all about kind of tuning into your wisdom and necessarily doing things the way other people tell you that you should. It has been a pleasure to hang out with you, and I don't feel anxious anymore about being with you, so that worked. Pleasure. If you've got any questions, ask them in the group. I'll get to them. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye.